So hello everyone. Today's lecture will be devoted to JavaScript functions. So here we go. My name is Maxim. I'm lead software engineer for EPAM. I'm working pretty long time with JavaScript. So if you have any questions, you want to reach me, you can find me by this email. I'm also available in Discord if you're there. So let's start from the beginning. Like, what is the function? Like, it's the sequence or the program instructions that perform a specific task. Like, and these instructions, they are packed as a one single thing. So you can use it to run this code over and over again. So this comes the reusability of your code. Also, you can pass some input and receive some output from this function. So let's look at the function. So usually function have a name, parameters, body, and return statement. So, and it starts with a special word function. If a function doesn't have a name, it's called anonymous function. That names of the variables that function will receive as an input is called parameters at the moment when they are declared. And when they're received and the function is running, they're called arguments. So the difference for the same thing, basically, you declare parameters, receive arguments, and you can return some value, or you can return nothing. So it will be undefined. Or you can return some this null. Sounds like it's also nothing, but it's different nothing. So you can return null, undefined, zero, object, another function, whatever value is possible to return in JavaScript. Okay. Then I switch to another presentation just to see. So you see the same function. We have the left and right the parameters, and we calculate the sum of them. It's simple as that. Also, function, a very special thing in JavaScript. So it can be assigned to a variable or a property. It can be passed as a value. It can be returned from a function. So, sorry, you have some issues? Okay. So with that said, you can assign the function to a property of an object. So in this way, you kind of receive a method. If you heard about object-oriented approach, so you have an object and it has functions inside it, and it works with other internal properties with this object. So such functions are called methods. Also, interesting enough, a function can be a constructor. So in JavaScript, if you saw only like ES6 JavaScript, so you saw that it has class keyword, and you can define a class with the methods and properties. Maybe it will be later for you to learn it deeper. But before that time, you could create a kind of class with a function. So you could define properties inside this function, assign them to this is a special keyword, and so you get property of this like instance of a class. And if you call this function with new, it would return a new object with those properties. Also, you could assign methods right here, or you could also, using the special property prototype, you could assign other methods. So you kind of created a class. Nowadays, it's mostly not used or used in some legacy projects. Now, I would encourage you just to use ES6 classes for this. as maybe most of the values, most of the things in JavaScript, function is also an object. It means that you can assign properties to a function. So let's look through this example. So we have just a function, log price. It returns and just logs the argument that it receives. And we have a function, the current size, and it defines another function. We'll talk about it, such things later a bit, how you can define function inside the function and be cool with it. But important here thing is here. So we take this internal function, we assign a property currency into it. So this function works as an object to store additional property. And it actually like stores it. So, and you can access it after you edit it there. So it is stored there. And you can return the function that's already has additional property, and so you can use it later. Okay. It is mostly, so the function, I showed you the simple declaration of the function, and you know how it works. So we define function, name, parameters, body. Body can have return statement. And this function, it is available in the, so if you define it in a, declare it in a file, you can access it even before you declare it. It's called hoisting. We'll talk about it in details later. So you just need to know that when you declare a function with just like this, it would be available before it's defined. It's very useful because you can like define a bunch of functions and don't worry of the order of their creation and just use them. Okay. Basically, it's the same. So you it's more about variables. So let's skip it. A function expression. It's when you not only declaring a function, but you're assigning it to a variable, or a function declaration is a part of another expression. In that case, this function is not bubbling up. Like you cannot use it before you define it, because it's just like how JavaScript runs, and the value appears during the assignment to the variable or to the expression. Yes, hoisted, right? As I mentioned about hoisting, we'll talk in the next lecture in more details. Yeah, right, it's hoisting. And when you have expression, it's not hoisting the value of the function. It's created in the moment of assignment of the expression execution, right? Okay. Because it's tricky. That's why I'm saying it so much. It may be tricky. So you kind of define a function, trying to use it, and you have like undefined instead of a function, and it's frustrating. So you can have, but when you use expression, this function, because it's not hoisting, still can have name, but this name would be available inside the function. So like this, you can see that we define the function expression. Here's the body. It has a name, and we use it inside. But if you try to execute this, you'll get like the function is not defined. So also surprisingly enough, you may be confused with this. Function constructor is not like a function as a constructor, but that constructor for functions. So all the functions, they have type of this embedded type into JavaScript. It's not that type that like number and string, but it's one of like object types. Like you have like symbol, like this function, array, object, map, like this. So you can define those arguments, and this is the body. But don't do this. It's actually rarely used. Important thing about arguments. So when you pass a primitive, meaning the number, string, boolean, or undefined, you are passing it by value, so you cannot mutate it. So from outside, if a function even like changes these values, it will not be changed outside. Only there will be reassignment. So basically, here you see the function, those values defined before the function call. Then we call function and we pass those values, and here we change them. What we actually do here is we just assigning to the variable, because argument becomes kind of variable, not strictly saying, but imagine this kind of variable, and we just assigning another value. So this is just another string. So this string is left here, and this string is assigned here to this variable. So, and the value that we passed here is just lost, but it's available before the function call. The same goes here. But if you pass object, it's getting passed by a reference or like a pointer if you closer to a reference, rather a reference if you know like other languages like PHP or C++. So you just pass kind of access to that value. So if you change something in the object, but some properties in this object, you will be changing the same object that was passed here in the function. So basically you have options here and you pass it here, and you can change properties in the option. But if you would reassign this, again, this would work as previously, like here, you're just reassigning this variable a new object. This is a new object. These options would not become an empty object. Is it clear? Okay. Yeah, just a small note. So if you define, when you declare a function, you list parameters that this function receives in typed languages, and like with a compiler on a strict checking of types and also interfaces of the functions, you would get an error if you would try to pass more values than expected, or maybe less if there is no default value. So in JavaScript, it's not true. JavaScript is very kind language. It allows you to do all the stuff that allows you to shoot your toes many times. So you can pass whatever amount of parameters you wish. So you can pass 1, 2, 3, 500 parameters. They all will be passed to the function. But another thing, what you can do with this, so you can check which parameters you've been passed, right? So kind of this freedom and agileness of the JavaScript. From other hand, it's, if you're a good developer and want to build a robust program, it gives you the responsibility to work properly with this. So you need to test how many arguments you really got, if you maybe expecting more, so you can build interface that you're expecting more arguments, and you can access them with this special variable that appears in the function when it runs. So you can actually check it's not array, it's object that works as array, because you can call um, this, you can find arguments by accessing a number, and it will return undefined if it's not passed to you. Also, it has length. It gives you how many defined or passed arguments you get. Callee is this function that is called. Yeah, and you can test. So, but it's not array. It looks like array, behaves like array at some moments. There's a new thing with a callee is a function that okay, let's you're interested, yeah? So let me have a sandbox here, just to show you. It gives you, right, this function. So let's walk through this. So you have 3 arguments here, lemon, true, length is 3, and callee is the function. It's tricky, yeah, I know. It's like a self-reference. Yeah, this way is better to describe. Is it clear? Why can we use it? So again, it would be used in rare cases. You could use it like to set something to function or check something in the function, just you accessing this function object. But I wouldn't focus on this like right now, because it's more advanced stuff, and like you would be using it if you would build some framework or library. You need like some low level stuff. Very convenient thing came to us with ES6. It's called REST. So it's like 3 dots. It works like a keyword here, just 3 regular dots, and name, and you would get something similar to arguments array here, but it will be array. And you can also like define some arguments, some parameters, and in the end it will be rest of parameters. So let's run this example. I think it's so you see we have this type, and friends is actually an array of this rest of the arguments. It's useful in the case when you don't know how many, like, I don't know, everybody says this phrase, but for example, I know this example would be later, but you know this max function, and it returns you like a, let's say it returns you the maximum number. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's be lazy. It returns 20, right? What if you have an array? So let's define it like with var. Okay, let's make a const. Yeah, random generator. And if you go to documentation and you will read the documentation for this function, it says that you need to pass multiple arguments. So it doesn't receive array. It's not ready for array, but you can do like this. Yeah, it works in both ways actually, and it works. Actually, yeah, I show you the reverse example, but yeah, it works both ways. As I mentioned, you can return anything, like from the function, any value. What is called? Could you clarify your question? REST, yeah. Yeah, the constructors, yeah, sure. Constructors, they always, you don't need to have return statement in a function that you use as a constructor. Yeah, but I think it will be covered later. Yeah, yes, or you don't need it. This would return undefined. This would return string. It doesn't return anything, and in the end, it is assumed that you have like this statement. So if you don't return anything from function, it returns undefined. So like there is no such thing as nothing but undefined. So in JavaScript, nothing is undefined. Okay, and yeah, you want to run it. Yeah, so like 0 string, 1 undefined, 2 empty. It goes to this, so it goes like to this place, to the end of the function. And 3, it goes here, we assign the value, and we just return an object. So it has type Choco. Okay, moving on. Functions data is kind of like a thing that you need to think about the function as a value. So you can pass it, you can assign it, you can return it. It's just a value. And as we know, it's an object, right? So for example, like here, those are two functions, right? And we create an array consisting of two functions. So you kind of create like a recipe. So you have a flow, and you can use array, call the second element, and just call it right in the place. You don't have to assign it to anything, just works. As we mentioned, so you object, function is object, you can assign property to it. And you can assign function to some property of an object. It's a very powerful concept in JavaScript. Also, yeah, let's take this. So this is called a higher order function. The function that takes one function as an argument and returns another function. It's so it kind of like it adds something to this function, augments it, and yeah, and uses it somehow. So it's a higher order function. Just remember this term might be useful for you. It's like from functional programming. Yeah, it is a Yeah, we'll come to closures. Yeah, it's so the function, we add property here and we use it here inside other scope. Yeah. So yeah, this is the would be closure when you run it. And we'll talk about it. And we kind of amend it, increase the counter and call the function. So and it will just run. So but the point here is just like you take one function, you pass another function as a argument, and you get third function. So you can do many things with functions. Would you like me to stop on this example more, or we can move? The scopes and the closures, we'll talk about it on next. Is it rather a carring? No, it's not a carring, I guess. Let me see it. Carring is like, no, it's a different thing. Yeah. Okay, this. So one magic thing about functions, you mentioned, you noticed that they can be used as a constructor, and they can be methods of some object. So when how it works actually, right? So it's not just any function that, how to say, so when you call a function, it may have this. Explain a bit later why may have. So most cases, okay, it may have this. So, but the question, what is it? So this is decided at the runtime. So you cannot say what this is before you run the code. You can analyze it, of course. You know, when you create the code, you know how it runs, but there might be options here. So right here in this example, this code would be this would be assigned to a global scope. So in browser, it would be window, and like Node.js, it would be like global. That's something similar to window. So imagine we have this function, and it tries to get this type property from this. But the question, what is this, right? And how can we manage what is there? So we can create an object and provide this property, or not provide it. And you cannot call it like this, because this function is defined like here, and it's just assigned and hoisted, like, as you mentioned, and it's just assigned in this concrete scope. And we can assign it as a property of object. In this way, this function accesses this like inner thing of an object, this context. It's called context. So, and if you call like lemon pie, cook pie, by this operation, and of course, to be defined, this function should be assigned. Otherwise, it would be undefined here. When this function runs, this has reference to this object. And the same happens here. Choco pie, we assigned it because it have to be something. It would have to be function. And by calling it from object function, we give this function access to this, and it will be this object. Okay. Would you like me to run it? No? Okay. Don't hesitate. Yeah, so the short notice about useStrict, I will mention it later also. So this is the something that you have to use always. Either you use some bundler and package manager that will do it for you. They will put the useStrict basically in the start of every file, or you do it yourself. You just put it in the very first line of the file, because it helps you um, from like just stupid mistakes. For example, like if you call this function without putting some context into it, without like doing like in previous example, without object or other ways, uh, this will be undefined. You will know it, and it has many other important like a catches for you. So it doesn't allow you to define variable without keyword var or let or const. And in like, if you don't use it, it will allow you more, but you will be hunting for these mistakes very long time. This useStrict just saves you from debugging and looking for your mistakes very long time. So again, we have function that runs this, and here we just created function and right away assigned it to the property, so we don't have this like extra step of assigning function, but it's already in our object. And actually we could um, let's do this simple. Okay, like this. I just want to show you one thing. So imagine you have Choco, but you don't have this function. Okay, maybe it's later. So you could do the same thing. Sorry, Chocopie. Just showing the same thing that the function. Sorry, is just a value. Like this. Sorry. Okay. So let's return something. You see, we have this function running in the scope of other object. The same stuff. So when you use this function as a constructor, meaning you call it with a special keyword new, it means like you tell the JavaScript compiler to use this as a constructor, right? So you don't have to name it with a capital letter. It doesn't matter at all. You just don't use like special keywords when you're naming it, but you can use new with it. It means it will run as a constructor. It means that it will have newly created object as this, and if you assign something, this would be returned from the constructor call when you call it like this. Also, you can have like function being constructor and not constructor. So like it doesn't matter. It's just a function. It matters how you call it. So if you code like this, then this would be a window if you are on a browser, and it might be very tricky for you afterwards. So beware. Yeah, also just some small things. So like you would not probably use it a lot. If you use it like this, so something wrong with your code and you would be better changing it. But just for you to understand, it's like a brain twister. So we have a function that is used as a constructor, right? It means it creates this, and inside we create a function. It means that function is works kind of like a method here, and inside this function we create another function, and this for this function would be like window if you call it just like this. And in order to have access to this to object that is created with this constructor, you would need to reassign it to some other value, because like each new function that is declared has its own this, and it's up to calling time when its function is called to decide what will be there. So better don't do this like these constructions, but just in case you have it, so you understand, like if you have some function, there should be this there, and you need to look carefully through your code or debug what's inside there. And other ways how you can change this value for the function. Okay, but haven't we been? Yeah, the new it's not that evil like eval, but I wouldn't say it's evil at all. You just need to know how to use it. Yeah, if you've been told to not to use it because it might be tricky for you, and like those are just examples because why it's so. Because you need to understand the inner mechanism of um, of construction, how it works. So probably that's why you've been told. It's like fair point, because for now you just don't need it. You can do like this: class by constructor, like to be like this. Whoa, sorry. Constructor, etc. You can cook like this. It's much easier. It's much cleaner, and even with those new keywords, if you wanted to inherit something and create inheritance, you would have to understand how the inheritance works, this prototypal inheritance, and you would like assign a prototype of a newly created function to the existing. So like you have a base function and you assign it object created with this function to the prototype of your child class. So it was tricky. For now you just like do like this: class lemon pie extends pie. Simple like this. That. So just use it. Don't use new, because it's just more complicated. It doesn't worth it. But yeah, if you work on a project, you would need where they use it. You would need to understand how it works. So change function context. Yeah, no problem. We can assign. You remember this trick? So we just we can assign function to the object and call it with the dot notation, like object dot function. It will have this as this object. There are other ways to do it even without assigning anything to object. So basically, for this, there are like call and apply, those are those first two. Those are synonyms almost. They just have different parameter. Um, like wait, so for apply you just pass array of parameters. For call you pass them as for math max. So you pass parameter with comma as each separate value. So for the call, do you remember this? So you cook by. Let's take this example and I will play with it a bit. So for now, what it does, like we have a function. It's like a previous example. We have a function that logs type and radius, whatever it means. Lemon pie is an object. It has type and radius. It's good for us. And Chocopie also has type and radius. So like it's safe to call this function with the context of either of those objects, right? They have everything. Or if they didn't have, you would have undefined instead of not defined property. So if you call lemon pie cook, like here, what will happen? So you have function assigned to a method, a property, and then it becomes like a method. And by this dot notation, you assign to this method this context. And here we have kind of the same property, the same function, but we use call and pass there Chocopie. And this allows us to replace this. So basically call is like a function. Imagine there is an object function, yeah, and it has call method on it. Actually, it has like prototype, but don't bother with it. And you pass this, then you pass arc1, arc2, etc. Oh, come on. So you pass how many you want. And there is another apply. It does absolutely the same, but you need to pass arguments as an array. No other difference. And let's run it. So we see lemon and choco, right? So you have the same absolute property in the same method. And also you can do like this: cook pie, call choco pie. You don't need to assign it anywhere. So it like allows you to do kind of to have your functions outside objects. I know it sounds tricky. It may be. So let's comment out this. Oh, what would I have wrong? Okay, sure. Because I removed it. Choco. So it's here. The only call is here. And the same way as apply. Yeah. The same. And let's imagine that you have arguments here, parameters. Arc1, arc2, and we just split theirs, and you would like to pass it. So you want you see we get this values also passed in the function. Okay, can we move on? Okay. we covered this. Apply. The same I explained. No need to waste time. Different, yeah, it's a nice mnemonic how to remember. The apply requires array. Just easy as that. I will just Google MDN apply or something. Just works also. And that previous example that I showed you with Max. So you can use REST. You can use REST if you're smart, you know ES6, and use a call, or you can just use apply. It also works. You don't need to convert anything. Yeah, right. Just the same array is passed there. Also fine. Bind. Bind is a very nice util as a method of function of the function of JavaScript, and it does almost the same job as call and apply, but bind doesn't call your function. Instead, it creates another function that has, when you will call this new function without any arguments even, it will have what you pass there. And it gives like very powerful tool for you. Yeah, let's have another example. Let's play with it. So you have this cook pie, lemon pie, and cook lemon pie is a variable, and we call cook pie bind lemon pie. What it does, so yeah, just to remind you of arguments. This, oh sorry, just as a reminder, so you could see it. First argument is this, so it's an execution context, and then arguments as the call receives them. So you can, that's why it's called bind. So you take the function and you bind execution context and maybe some arguments if you wish to this function, and you create another function. Before bind, we would create a closure to achieve the same results, because this function was very needed in the regular development, because you would want some handlers of some events to be bound to something. So you could, okay, let's keep it. So you create another function, and then you're free to call it with some parameters. And also you could take this argument, oh, sorry, and put it here. And that means that you bound this argument here. So it means when you call this function that's created with bound context and the first argument, you would be passing second argument. Is it clear? I know it can be tricky. Just to your mind. Okay, good. Cool, thanks. So absolutely the same thing. So we're just passing some number, context, and we create another function, yeah, like this, and you have it. So imagine like we have, okay, yeah, let's play with the examples a bit later. I heard you wish to see debugging, right? You still want to see it sometime soon? Okay, yeah, I'll do it. Bind, okay. This is the kind of hack, I don't know how to call it, a workaround. So basically, we take advantage of the function expression that it exists at the moment of assignment. So it creates, and it's not hoisting. and let's see, it's just some function, and we wrap it with the braces. So you see this changed, and it creates from a regular function declaration, it creates function expression. Then we call it right away. So we kind of created invisible function, and all the code that was running here inside, it was hidden from outside. So just magic. You can pass arguments and receive them as parameters. Yeah, right. You could see this in like early ages a lot. Now you don't see it, but they still exist there. If you use Webpack or something, they wrap it. So for example, you run the function here. So that, let me show you this. We can debug it. Yeah, I want to debug it. It's like crazy code. Okay. And I need to call it lemon pie cook. Let's have an argument here. Okay, I'm pressing F5. So okay, let me show you how I did it, right? How to set up debugger. Imagine it's like a small break. So if you use VS Code, right? I suppose most of you using VS Code, right? Or not? Can you? If any other editors post it. So if you open here, so you have the different like Explorer, and you have debugger. You open it here. So this is the settings. Open Launch.js. WebStorm also has it. Um, I will try to show, maybe I have it, but I'm not ready. Yeah, I will answer this question. Very good question, Enterprise. So like I pressed here, and it opens launch JSON file, and it would create automatically, like you can add configuration, and it gives you a lot of choice. You can type like Node, because I have Node.js, yeah, because I'm running it in console, and attach means when you're already running process and you want to attach and start debugging it, if this process is running, or Node.js attach, if you're running it in the inspect mode. If not, so you will not be attached. And Node.js launch program. Launch program means it will start my program. So this is just for Node.js, right? Let's try maybe browser a bit later. I will show you. So, and it automatically creates, and it sometimes it shows like index.js, sometimes app.js. So basically, it's your project folder, and this is a file that would be run when you choose it from here. So if I save it and name launch program. So let's like call it like fake launch. Now it has two, and I will choose it and press here, and it will try to start app.js, and it's a mistake, of course. Yeah, I don't have app.js. So, but I created the same thing, and just for a sandbox, I replaced program with this file. File is a variable for open file. So whatever file I have open, it would execute, and it would be executed with the inspection. So when I run this launch program, run it, or I use like F5, you can change bindings. It starts as a debugger. It's very simple. So let's have a look at it. So we created object. This creation passed here. Okay, I will stop it and start it again. So this object started creating, and this function didn't wait for the object creation to finish. Like it started like while the object was created. You see, because we have immediately executed function expression. It executes immediately, and it runs here. It creates a variable that is encapsulated in this function expression, because the function creates scope. We'll talk about it again later, in more details about scopes and the nested scopes and how hosting works and how everything works. So basically, this variable is created. If you wouldn't have this function here, this variable, not for const, but it's been invented in earlier ages, right? When we had only var. So this variable would be hoisted to the level of global scope in the browser, in the window, and you would pollute your window object. So we create whatever var. So maybe already const let, they have block scope, but var, to hold the var from hoisting, you need a function. Without it, you cannot hold it, so it will bubble up. So you created it and you use it inside your function here. So you kind of created not only hidden variable, but you also created closure to use it inside this function. It will run, it will create variable, and this variable will leave until you destroy this function. So again, no worries, it's a complicated topic. I will explain later more. And let's proceed. So I'm doing next step. So basically here is like step over means next step, execute next line. But if you have a function execution on this line, so this function would be completely executed and it will be like a one command. If you use this step into, you will step into this function. Now we cannot step into because we're just creating this function, anonymous function without name, just with single parameter. Yeah, so I cannot step into or step over it. I just go further, and I will put, okay, I'll put breakpoint here. And I'm just going out of this. So object just created, nothing more. But this object, let's see this object. We can hold mouse here, pointer, and it will show us it has radius, it has cook, and cook is a function with a parameter nn. That's how we define it here. Also on the right panel, we have, let me clear it. We have this object. You can, oh sorry. You see this cook function, it's created. It's not that immediately executed expression, it disappeared and it returned a function. That's why we have this cook, this function, because we returned it from here. If we just remove return, so cook would be undefined. And you can see that function is indeed an object. It has name, it has prototype, some system proto property, color, it's who called it from the context. It has arguments that now are not filled because we don't call it. We haven't called it. It has scopes. Yeah, we'll talk about scopes. So it's like pretty curious thing. Radius. So this object has two fields. And about stepping into. So I press step into, and I get, okay, it's not fair because I have breakpoint here, but it would stop here anyway. And I can step into function and I can see now argument has some value. Type has value lemon, this radius, and this is the object with radius and cook, and I can see like this cook function here. But when it has the cook function, it means it's like a not running way of the function. It's the code that represents this rather like object that represents the function. But now we are in the running instance of this function. Sorry, it's like a different thing. Okay, and if you want to stop, you can proceed with it, or you can stop debugging if you found a bug or something, or like this. Over, and that's all. It goes until the end of program and ends. Shows output value. It's a very useful thing when you want to play with some code and you don't understand something or like how it works. You just debug it and you see all the values. You understand how it works. Okay. For JavaScript UFS. Okay. Yeah, if you have article, so I will skip it, right? Dennis, are you satisfied? Okay. Okay. So the scope is let me show you this example. So in this tricky example, the scope, as I mentioned, we created this function just to create a function scope. So because for var, scope is, there are two scopes, like, or three scopes: function, global, and module. Let me skip it, I guess, a bit. Oh, okay. How about we make a 5-minute break, or you want to proceed like this? Okay, okay. Vadim, what do you think? Do I need to stop recording and start it, or just leave it? Maybe. Okay. So break it is till the, I don't know, 12 minutes, 2012. How's it? Okay. Good. Yes, right, Maciek. Okay, so can we continue? Look left and right for your neighbors. Sorry. Ruby arrow functions. Slim. Much. I honestly don't understand. What is Ruby arrow functions? Ruby language. No, I'm not aware. Honestly, never worked with it. I was a PHP guy. Yeah. Okay, so as I wrote in the chat, I have one small topic to cover about this. It's like it's about arrow functions with just a syntax change. I'll explain a bit. It's not that much of information, and we will be able to do some questions and answers part for longer time, and also I will do some like live coding driven by your requests. So you can ask which questions you have, and we'll try to figure this out. Okay. I know it's like tricky question. These functions, they are so agile, they are so dangerous, but it's okay. You'll get it. So the arrow functions, it's a new thing for ES6. It's a shorthand for function creations because it's just very nice and useful in many cases to have like very short syntax without this word function, and but you need to replace it with something to not confuse compiler. So we added this arrow. It's like equal sign and greater sign. It forms arrow. Then you have pretty much the same thing as the function with some exceptions. It doesn't have this at all. Like if you would use this inside this function, imagine like you wrote this just above the function or below the function. So like not inside this function. No arguments, so you cannot access to this arguments semi-array value, and you cannot construct objects with this arrow functions. So they're just short syntax for creating real functions without magic, like or with less as less magic as possible. So this is like the shortest no operation function that does nothing. And let's see some code just to stick it. So, but as you don't have sorry, as you don't have a function keyword, you also don't have name. So you just need to assign it somewhere, or you may not assign it. It will be just a function in the air, but you will need to create it to call it right away. So it's the regular way that this arrow function just created. So you just define variable, you assign it right away, and this would work the same, almost the same, except for this. So this would be the same as you would use this like somewhere here. It doesn't create this execution context. It only has this lexical scope. And that's all. Next step. Yeah, you can do, okay, why are we doing this? So yeah, you can create it within the functions, like basically the same thing, 3 exceptions. no arguments, reference error. JavaScript always returns reference error when something is not meant to be called, especially for use strict when you use it. You have more of them. You can use like actually the same REST syntax here. And there is another shortcut, no constructor. And there is a short syntax for functions that just return value. So basically, there are functions that execute some code, and there are functions that and they don't return anything, just do some job. I don't know. It's usually functions with side effects. And there are functions that just calculate something and return the value, like not like this function. This function returns undefined because console log returns undefined. And you can replace it with like this syntax. So you just remove curly braces and you remove return. So and you have this short syntax. And if you have only single parameter, you can remove this braces also. Of course, if you would have like an object here, I'll show you while coding. You would have to, so basically if you need to delimit somehow some value from this and this, you would have to stick it even if you have a single argument. Yeah, if you have two of them, you need to have braces. And this is syntax when you just wanna use this short syntax for return, but you need to return object. And in this case, the compiler would be confused with the curly braces. It would think that this is the start of a body, but you don't want your body, function body, be something like this. It would be error, right? So you need to put another braces to have an expression, right? You create kind of expression here. Yeah. We'll get to these examples a bit later because like they're more advanced. This filter things, I'll show you how to build them, okay, in the code. Closure. Okay. I skipped closure because I have another presentation on closures and scopes for more details. For now, you don't need it because I'll try to avoid it in our examples. So, but chaining is, I don't know, I think nobody uses chaining for now in some normal modern JavaScript style. It's been a killer feature for jQuery world. They basically created a very good use for this chaining because they were writing something like this. You could have like jQuery, get some div, I don't know, or not div, like let's have it like element, I don't know, container. Then you could take like children of it. Then you could, I don't know what you could do, like change some, I don't remember. Maybe like you could like change something for all of those children. They were iterating, so they created like a crazy useful and easy to use tool with this chaining. I haven't seen anything since jQuery like using this chaining, but basically it's just a function returning this or returning some other object, right? That you can use some object because you use dot. Dot is used with objects, so like it's as simple as that. So you can have like object A that has function get object. This function just returns, let's return object B. Come on, So smart, smarter than me. Okay, and we have like object const b. It's also object, and another. We will return a. Yeah. So you could run like this: a get object, get another, like this. It's fun. Is it clear? Okay, so you can use this inside arrow functions, but the value would not be so the you remember about regular functions. Each time function is executed, the execution context is created for this run of the function. So it means that it will receive some object for this value. If the function uses this, of course, the compiler is smart and it tries to be smart about using resources, right? But you can think of it like each time you run a function, the context is created. So there is an object for this function that stores its context, and you can access this context by this, right? So let's have function, right? So there's always something here, but if you use strict, that I encourage you to always use, if you call this function just like this, you would have it undefined. Just so you don't confuse or don't pollute your window object. And you will have as early error message as possible, because you would try to do something like this. I don't know, type equals something, and undefined is not an object. So you would have an error early. So that's why use strict is very useful. And if you would create this function like this, const name equals like arrow function. Yeah, if you don't have parameters, by the way, you need to use braces. So if calling this is not prohibited, but it would be the same as you would write it here. So like, yeah, this is the same. It means that this function does not create its context, run context. Okay, is it more or less clear? Okay. With the chaining, is it clear how chaining magic works? Okay. Self-overriding functions. Oh, I don't think if I should teach you this. This is the function. Yes, I will show cases for error functions shortly. Yeah, let's just proceed with this. Some topics. Self-overriding functions. I don't encourage this. So like you can do a lot of things. You can change things on the fly in the runtime, but please be cautious about it when you write something like this. Like, please think about your colleagues that would be reading this code. Like it's a good example for the presentation. Like you can do this. So imagine like you can override this. It's crazy what you can do with JavaScript. That's why so many people starting with this easily. Like you just write anything and it somehow works. But to make some more or less complex application with JavaScript, you need like really good experience. You need to know all the tricky things, how it works when you can override something. It doesn't protect you like Java or JavaScript or C#. I don't know. It's not like those big browser languages. I don't know. But JavaScript is very powerful. Okay, so let's skip it. Decorator is very important thing. Is like also mentioned at the higher order function. Is the function that you create with some other function, and it works and gives you more than the first function. So so this function like cook pie, it just cooks pie, right? Nothing more. It does its job. And if you would like to, I don't know, like send some log for during you cooking something, or you would like to, I don't know, do some extra stuff, you would have to change this function. And this function would become not very good function because it would be doing two things. But you can create a higher order function. Why it's higher order? Because it's function running on other function, yeah, and it's also called decorator because it decorates, kind of adds some nice stuff to your function. So you basically take your existing function and you pass it in other function, and this function, you see, it calls the original function in the end. But before this, it creates function and with arguments and just passes, so you can have any arguments that any parameters that you had here. So this function should not be bothered like with special number of parameters or like their shape or whatever, their names. They're just passing everything you would pass here later transparently. But here's the additional line of code. This is the decoration. And all the rest of the stuff is just dancing around to make it work. In newer suggestions to JavaScript, there are suggestions to add some notations like in TypeScript to have those decorations out of the box and with simpler syntax, so you don't have to create some wrapper functions. You just could write it in the comment block. So like, but it's kind of nice concept to know. It's very good. It's very powerful. You can like build something huge with small functions. It's just one of examples. This decorators, how it could be useful. So memorization, if you know it, it's like there is a pattern called memoize. It means that it remembers some value that's been calculated by this function. So you can implement some wrapper. So this higher order function, you can also call it wrapper because it kind of wraps around the function, original function. And fun is the function name. And here's the call, original call. So basically it checks, it creates a kind of hash. You know what hash is? It's like a key that you can identify your arguments values by. So it's like a straight way to do it. It's not real. In real program, you would not do this because it's pretty slow. But you create unique key for each number of different arguments, and with this key, you just check if there is a special property on your function. For memory, you create empty object if it's not existing, and you by this key you add if it's here, so you just return it, and if it's not here, you run this function with these arguments, and you get the returning value, and you store it inside the property of this function by this key. So if you run in this function with other arguments, it would calculate those arguments key. It would check that there is no memory cache. Yeah, it's cache. It's cache, but the pattern call memorization. But yeah, it's not the only way how cache works, but it's certainly one of implementation of the cache. Right? Yeah, it works as a cache. A kind of memorization is the way to implement cache, right? But cache is like a requirement to store something. Yeah, and it just shows the example. So you have different arguments, and you accumulate. Would you like to run it or not? Or moving forward? Wanna see cache? Okay. Okay, let's move. Decorator spy. Oh, it's other example. So briefly, yeah, spied. So it like calculates something. You didn't use tests properly, I guess, yet. So it's kind of calculates how your function was called, how many times, some all this stuff. So decorators are very powerful. Now let's get to coding. So first, the question I read, it's about usage for arrow functions, right? So first of all, this is the origin. People just wanted shorter syntax to create functions, and also maybe they added also like a lighter way, like taking less resources, because you don't have to create a context each time. You don't have to create these arguments semi-array, and that could cause some memory leaks and some additional memory also. So they reduced the resources needed for arrow functions, and created this short arrow functions syntax. And also you manage it well with like how it's, so you create it as a variable wherever you want, however you want. And let's have some task. Yeah. So imagine we have people, and like, I don't know, John, Jakub, I don't know. Help me. Okay, so you have some array. I will improve it later. And you have like a greetings. Hi. Hey. Hello. You would wanna like greet the people with different ways. So you have like, for example, function get greeting. And it would return, let me think about it. So let me think first about what I'm going to do. Let's make it more complex at the beginning. H, you know. Okay, let's do something you would find useful for sure. So you know that array has function like filter, yeah, and to use this function, we pass here another function that receives the item, current item. And so, for example, let's have people older than 20. Yeah. So filter. You can have the function. Function is older than 20. Crazy, yeah? And person age, right? Then is older than 20. Come on. You know what? I have this quokka. I think it helped me. Okay. Just easier. So you see, one guy is not there. Yeah, and uh, like it's like people just feeling like it's a bit too much. Like to write the function just for this simple expression, right? So you can just have it like this. Const is older. Even like this person and like this. Just shorter, right? It's nice. And even you can put it right here. It would not break a lot, right? It looks also nice. So this is like a perfect use for it. And even let me show you a bit further. So what if you don't want to create this ugly function is older than 20? Yeah, I created it ugly for the reason. If you do like this, age, the result is the same. This is the carrying, but not really, but kind of. You could have two arguments, but I split them in several arguments. So how do you like this? You see, we have a neat name, we have configurable predicate. Oh, sorry. Yeah, like this. Still works. Yeah, like this. Does it explain a bit how they are useful? And yeah, you can create even like more useful stuff with this. So and even like this, you could have this const is greater than older is older than 20, right? You still can have your ugly function. and you can combine pretty awesome, yeah, things. Want to show you. Okay, I can show you map example. You know the map, alt people. So array map function, it maps values. So this function is very similar to filter. So what filter does, it cycles through each element of the array. It takes the first element, runs the function, passes the element inside the function. It also passes the whole array there and index of this element. But it's not the very best practice to use this index, because it's like, I don't know, sometimes you have to do this, but you just, if you have value, you have a more pure like execution of the functions, right? Because you don't know where they lay in the array. You just operate with the values. Yeah, it's mostly for the syntax. Yes, yes. It requires practice. You just need to try them. You will love them. It's so nice to use. They're very clean. Yeah, just you need to get used to them. So this map, it takes each element of the array, does something, and calls the function that you put here, function, and this function returns a value. And in the result of this map run, there will be another array created. Yeah, array, another array, like this. And this would be completely new array. It will be the same length that the first array, second array. They would have the same length, but the values might be absolutely different. It's up to this function how to transform each value, but function works like with each value separately. So let's take those people, all people, and let's take just their names. Yeah. So imagine that we have function get name. Const names. Yeah. So now get name is not defined, so let's define it. Again, const get name, and we getting element of people array, so it's a person, and we return a person's name, person name. It's not working because I need console names. You see how it works? It's very easy. And yeah, the same, you can combine those, that new line doesn't change anything here. And you could put it here. So you first filter, and now you see only two names. So like, I had a question, what names we have for people older than 20 years, like a stupid request, but anyways, or like imagine we have different people with the same name, 32. Yeah, so here you would have 3 Pavel, but it's not very interesting. Let's find only like names that unique. That's why I don't like semicolons, because you need to remove them always. So for this we can use reduce function. Have you used reduce it? This is the tricky one. So the reduce, it receives a function with and this function would receive accumulated value than the element, and you would give like initial value here. So you get names. If you want to get like unique names, I'm afraid maybe it's not. You know what? Let's keep the reduce. I think it would be like too complicated, and let's leave the arrow functions. And I wanted to show you, for example, bind example. Let's create instead of this function older, I will comment it out. Set. Yeah, sure, you can use anything you can find. Yes, we can use set for the uniqueness, but I wanted to show the functions and just realized that it's too complicated for a short time we have. So imagine that we have a function, real function is older, yeah, and it would return the same thing that this function. Yes, I'm lazy a bit. Like this. So you would give this function age and person, and it would return this is the parameter, and we receive it, and person age, so it should be working perfect. But you need to use it. You can, if you just call this function with this one argument, it just runs till the end, but the person is empty, it's not undefined, and says like property age is undefined. It cannot read undefined as an object. It cannot get a property, and the program breaks. But what if I like wanna create the function and not pass the value? So like there might be the situation that you have some other function and you use it. This is older inside this function, older, and but you only receive a person here, right? And you want to like and you want to receive some, okay, imagine like this is like the limitation, right? You don't have this, you can receive only one function, this compare, you can receive it from some module, but you don't have age, so you want to receive it from other. So you have age to be here with this compare. Yeah, you need this is older than 20. So the rule is already there because you don't have this rule in this module, and you don't want to use this, like include other module just for this rule. So you want to get the function that already has this rule, but you don't want to create this stupid function with this rules included into this, like bound just to one value, right? Is it clear, more or less? So, and let me remove it. Yeah. And you have only this, yeah. It also already calculating something. So you can create a function that is called older than 20. So it will be already including logic and some data. Okay, stop it, please. Okay. And is older. So you would bind this is older function, and you need to put age there. So this 20, you know, this 20, so or you received it from some response, whatever, for some variable. But okay, what do we do with the context? So you can put null here, and null means like nothing here. So like it doesn't change the context, but and actually we don't need context, we don't have it here. So yeah, and it will create another function that will receive nothing as a context, and it means like it will not change it, and 20 would be the first argument. So then you would be able to use it as this function, right? So you would be calling like a person. Okay, it's like one of cool uses of the bind. So you have function, but in order to have this, you need functions, parameters organized in a proper way. The best way is to have some settings coming first, and the data that is most likely to be dynamic going later. So in this case, you can create some nice different comparators or some other functions that you can configure. So basically, we created a configured function of this is older. Okay. Any questions about functions? Maybe some uses about plugins. Like I use a bunch of different plugins. I just installed some bundle. They go in bundles. I just try everything honestly. So, but you can find like Node.js bundle. I have it Node debug, but it's not working, or it's working. I don't remember. So I just use everything I can. So I install a couple of plugins, try them. If I don't like them, I just remove them. So like I just search them here. JavaScript. Okay, so the JavaScript debugger nightly. It's native or something. So like here is a Docker, but I don't use it. This is the Nix console. Okay, the Git Lens is a nice plugin. Bookmarks, I use it, but not for this project. In a big project, it's useful. Git live, it's good for live share. You can see it here, so it allows you to start a live sharing session. So you log in with a GitHub, and it allows you to share the code editor with somebody. So you just share the link. Code written by others? No, I don't think so. Okay. And this Quokka, I show you live chat. Quokka. This is the extension that allows you to do some code validation here. So I should run Quokka. It's very nice, but in the free version, okay, I need to stop sharing. Yeah. I don't wanna some Quokka start on current file. It runs here. It requires a payment if you want to use something like this, and it will evaluate any value on this line. So it would be more useful or more convenient, I guess. But in the free version, it gives you this console log, so it basically gives you output. But honestly, I don't use it much. I use just a terminal when I need to test something. It's very simple. You just run node sandbox, and it runs and gives you some output. So it's fine to see, like it's okay. Or you use debugger and you see everything. There is also plugin to open debugger with a Chrome. You can just again search it. Chrome, something like this, debugger for Chrome, but I don't use it. I just use Chrome. I open Chrome and you can set it to use as a separate window so you can see it full screen. It's very useful. Okay, any questions? Did I miss something? Would you like to do some decorator together? Or you want to sleep? Yes, okay. So let's have a person that is older. It's very simple. Let's do something like dummy first, and then if you have idea what to do, what about the homework is going to be explained. Okay, so I didn't share. I thought it was shared already. How do you usually get your homework? Code Wars stage. Yeah, it's Code Wars, right? Yes, the Code Wars. Deadline is 28th of April. Okay, so let's do a quick decorator. So we have this our is older. A dummy thing would be function. Just would be counting some calls. Would be fine. Counting calls. I see. So that's cool. Count calls. So it's a decorator, right? Creates function to count its calls and store their number in the function. Would it be useful for you, like to see how it's created? Okay, so we have initial function here that we want to decorate. Okay, it's called original function. I want to be pure. Oh yes, I forgot to mention one more concept. I will mention it just to do side effects. Yeah, just not to forget. So the original function means that we need to return it. Whatever it returns, it may be returning nothing or undefined, but we still need to return it because we're just doing some general decorator. We don't know what the function would be doing or returning. Okay, so people dropping. Yeah, okay, so we need to create a function. This is just to create a closure to get the arguments. Args. You can use it by REST, or you can also I will use this arguments special variable that's automatically created within the function call, and you return this original function called with this args, right? And my decorator now does nothing. It just wraps my original function with some other function, and it would be running the same way it would run without decorator, right? It's like an empty decorator. And to make it count calls, so let's imagine that we have some special variable defined. So let's think of like, okay, original function, like call count. Yeah, so imagine that we have something here. And if it's not there, so we need to create it. If, okay, if, okay, sorry for that. Come on. Not. You can do like this. It's not always the best way to do this. So the better way would be like undefined. This is the special global variable undefined. It's always undefined. You cannot reassign it. If it's undefined, so we need to create it, right? And we not just create it, we assign it to 1. Oh no, sorry. We just create it to 0 here. And this would be a calling moment. So we kind of initialize it here. And at the calling moment, we assure that this is there. So we could avoid doing this, but okay. And we just doing this like this. So we increase the call count, and then we call the original function, and that's all. This would be a decorator. Okay, I guess we are a bit out of time. Okay, so the last thing, if you, for those who haven't dropped, and the call count is what was the question? The call count is the created property that I just created here. So it's nothing defined. It's just like I added this, and you would use it here. So count calls, and you would pass function here like is older, like this. So is older is a variable, and you count calls, and you would create a function is older with counter, like this. So, and if you pass it here, let me make it work, I guess. So I have is older, it's regular, I'm binding it like this, get name. Names, okay, is older than 20, should work here, get name. Function person. Yeah, okay, sorry. John Powell. So it works as the same, and let's output also the counter. Is older with counter call count. Yeah. Come on. Oh. Okay. Something. Yes, it's a property created on a run. So I have some mistake, I guess. Get name. Okay, I removed get name. Okay, no, it's this thing. Okay, I don't have mistake. Maybe I do. Count is undefined. Count. Yeah, sorry about that. I think you're already bored. Yeah, nice. I'll stop this quokka. I just don't wanna like waste your time here. Sure, I'm using tools. Where exactly? No, not in this function. No, it says that the property code doesn't exist on type. No. Return function. No, I guess it's okay. No, unfortunately. Okay, let's have it. So count is undefined. We're going here. We assign it here. Count is 0. Function args. The function is older. That's correct. Okay, now it is 0. Args. What is args? John 0 array. Okay. And so we do the count 1, and this function is still is older age person. Of course. Sorry for that. I guess like this. Yeah, like this. Sorry, I was like got confused. So the mistake was that I was adding the call count to the original function and was trying to get it from the this function, just a wrapper. Okay, yeah, maybe better way would be just to add counter here. It would be more natural thing. So, but I think you would maybe try to do this if you wish. Okay, so couple of concepts. So this function, there is a like a name for special functions that usually do just a calculation and returning value, and those functions do not mutate any arguments, and those functions do not change anything outside those functions, and every time you call them with the same number of arguments, they return the same value. Okay, got it? So the function like this is older. Anytime you pass 20 here and the person here, like one of those objects, it will always return like true or false, but it will always return the same value each time you call it. And this function doesn't change anything outside. It doesn't change anything it is passed. It means this function is pure. It's called pure. Why is there a special concept like this name for this function? Because such functions is the best that you can organize your code. So these functions are easily testable. You can test them like very nicely, and like they're simple because they always return the same value. So you just pass a number of arguments, you just receive number of outputs. So it's great. You don't need to prepare any environment to test those functions because they don't rely on anything outside except for arguments. That's great to have such functions, and you can combine them. You can create wrappers around them easily. Any decorators, you can switch them, mix them, like combined with the filter on map or something like this. If the function changes or accesses something from outside, like the function like a read file, for example. This is the nice function, which is not pure, and you give the file name, and it returns you like a file object. Yes, for each file name, it should return like always the same file, but depending on operation system, depending on the state of your disk, it may not return file. It may fail. It may like return error that disk is not accessible or something, permission denied or something. So you cannot rely on such a function. Those functions should be very few for your system, and don't create them function like is older and it takes some object from outside by their own desire, like a greeting or something. This is the impure function, and it's very hard to move these functions, rename them, change, use in other environments. Those the last things I want you to remember. Thank you for your attention. I hope it was a bit clear, at least a bit. Okay. If you have any questions, you can send me like chat message. I'm not sure about how can you access Teams contacts. In Discord, you can ask. Yeah. Yeah, and play with functions yourself. Yeah, thank you guys. Okay, see ya.